I'll be reading from Leviticus chapter 11, verses 9 through 11. These you may eat of all that are in the water, whatever in the water has fins and scales, whether in the seas or in the rivers, that you may eat. But all in the seas or in the rivers that do not have fins and scales, all that move in the water, or any living thing which is in the water, they are an abomination to you. They shall be an abomination to you. You shall not eat their flesh, but you shall regard their carcasses as an abomination.
When Sarah and I first got to hang out together and kind of get to know each other, one of the first things I learned about her, I learned some things about her and spiders. And for her, they caused great fear. But for me, that caused great fun. And so puppies are fine. If our place was infested with puppies or sometime like that, that'd be no problem. If you came home and said, oh, we got a puppy problem, say, great, it'd be fine. If I hit a little plastic puppy, I get a different reaction than if I hide something else and wait for her to find it, which has, like I say, has been a lot of fun for me. We, in our daily Bible reading, we've been in Leviticus, and I thought I'd share some possibilities with you why Leviticus has a lot to do with our situation. So if you look at Leviticus 11, what James just read for us is kind of this odd stretch of a passage. It's part of Leviticus 11 where it's talking about clean and unclean animals. And you probably know enough about the Old Testament that once upon a time, God said, don't eat these animals. You can eat these, but not these. And the first 8 verses, if you kind of skim those right now in Leviticus 11, you'll see he starts listing these different animals. He says, okay, these are okay, and these are not. And he goes to a lot of detail, pointing out which is okay and which is not. Then you get to verse 8. It says, you'll notice the phrase, they are unclean to you. A lot of specific details here. And I'm going to start reading verse 9. And I'll point out a couple words along the way. In fact, when James read this, I'm sure some of them just jumped out at you automatically. These you may eat, whatever's in the water, all that have fins and scales. Those in the water in the seas or in the rivers you may eat. But whatever is in the seas and in the rivers that does not have fins and scales, among all the teeming life of the water, and among all the living creatures that are in the water, they are detestable things to you, and they shall be abhorrent to you. You may not eat of their flesh, and their carcasses you shall detest. Whatever is in the water does not have fins and scales is abhorrent to you. And it goes on. You very quickly realize there's a difference between spiders and puppies. We don't detest puppies. Everybody loves those. But a lot of people detest spiders. So there's something built into all of us that there's certain creatures we like and some that we don't. You look at 11:13, Leviticus 11:13. Certain birds, he says, I want you to detest those. I want you to not have anything to do with them. Don't eat them. And then 11:20 through 21, detest certain insects. Then if you skim 41 through 42, this whole chapter has a lot to do with this, 41 through 42, and it talks about whatever swarms, crawls on its belly, and has many feet. Don't eat it. And if I were standing there, I'd be like, okay. Does not ruin my dinner plans at all. Some of this, as you're going down the list, you'd be like, some ranch, and it would be okay. But some of it, you're like, I don't want to eat that. It's gross. I don't want to have anything to do with this. A lot of these things, especially those verbs that I'm just pointing out, swarming and crawling and many feet, I have no problem not eating that because it's already disgusting to me. So there's clearly a problem among the unclean stuff. Some of it offends me and some of it sounds delicious. So if I went by my own guidelines, if I followed my heart when it came to this menu, I'd be okay with some of the stuff that's labeled as unclean under the old law. So I can't rely on my own way of measuring this out. On my own, using my own disgust meter, I wouldn't do very well on this. I'd have to trust God's perception. I need God's perception to deal with this situation. If I just use my perception, I'm going to end up eating stuff that's going to hurt me. Then you get to, if you'll notice in verse 43, you get to a passage, and it touches on the significance of this. God isn't just playing games. He's not just looking over the animal kingdom and saying, okay, I made a bunch of stuff, don't eat that. eat this, and go. That's not how he plays at all. Here's 11:43. Notice he says, do not render yourselves detestable. So if I was going through this for the first time, that would kind of get my attention and say, okay, I'm supposed to hate that, and this is okay. But then he says, don't render yourself detestable. If I eat something that's detestable, that transfers to me in some fashion. In fact, one thing you might notice if you have a footnote where it says, do not render yourselves detestable, it really means do not render your soul detestable. And now we're kicked up to a spiritual level. Again, God is doing this for a reason. This is not just culinary advice, it's spiritual advice. This would somehow affect my soul under the old law. Here's 11:44. This is Leviticus 11:44. For I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves, therefore. It's kind of a setting apart idea. And be holy, for I am holy. That's one of those religious words that's always floating around, but it essentially just means to be set apart. That's what holy means. Hebrews says, without holiness, no one will see the Lord. And yet, if you talk to the average religious person who says, yeah, I'm a Christian, said, well, are you pursuing holiness? And we'll say, well, I'm not a super Christian, I'm just a Christian. That's part of the deal. Any Christian is pursuing holiness, being set apart, not being like the world. We're playing games if we come to church and then act like everybody else in the world. It's about being set apart or holy. Look at 11:47. He's getting to the heart of this. It's all about this, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean. So this animal arrangement, it wasn't like God messed up some of the animals and say, oh, wow, this batch is unclean, don't have anything to do with this. He did it intentionally. He's giving them practice to know the difference between clean and unclean. Training in order to be like, this is okay and that's not okay. And then you fast forward many, many years, and you probably are aware of this. You might be way ahead of me on this. Go to Acts 10. Things change. We're not under the old covenant. In general, it's the menu's wide open, within reason, I guess. You want to be smart. But you'll notice in Acts 10, God uses Peter to kind of drive this point home. And notice Peter's reaction when God tells him that this law is no longer in active state. Look at Acts 10:13. A voice came to him. He presents a bunch of animals as kind of a vision. Get up, Peter, kill and eat. He says, go ahead and eat these things, but it's unclean animals. Verse 14, but Peter said, by no means, Lord, for I have never eaten anything unholy and unclean. Notice that idea, unholy or not set apart, and that it's unclean. Verse 15, again a voice came to him a second time, what God has cleansed, no longer consider holy. And he's using this as a platform to express the idea that it's not just about the Jews. Anybody is welcome to belong to God. Look at Mark 7. This is earlier when Jesus was talking about this very thing. And Mark 7:18. And he said to them, are you so lacking in understanding also? Do you not understand that whatever goes into the man from outside cannot defile him, because it does not go into his heart, but into his stomach is eliminated? Thus he declared all foods clean. He's trying to upgrade things. You see, the old covenant was about don't eat this animal, and it's okay to eat this one. This is clean, this is unclean. But we're going to upgrade to a spiritual level now. It's not about the physical menu anymore. So I don't know. Maybe part of you, if you're doing your reading and you're going through the Bible, say, well, I got an idea. Why not just make all the animals clean to begin with? Well, it's important to remember that God does everything on purpose. He is not flippant or arbitrary about anything he decides. Everything is designed to get as many people as possible to heaven of their own free will. He's not going to force anybody to choose that. God does everything on purpose. But you could say that's not really accurate. He does everything for a purpose. But even that's not quite right. He does everything for the purpose. Ephesians 1:3-4, if you want the meaning of life, here it is in a very short phrase. And it essentially says that someday we will stand before God, and we have to be two things. We have to be holy, which means set apart, and blameless, which is perfect. That's all you got to do, is not be like the world and be perfect. And of course, we cannot do that on our own. But that's what we pursue. When we're baptized, Jesus provides that clean life, sets us apart, makes us perfect, but then we can continue to pursue that holy life because that's who he is. Everything is designed to help us move in that direction. It's not about just checking in once in a while and being religious once a week, of course, but it's about moving in that direction constantly. And to help with this purpose, God uses the animal kingdom. He's really good at what he does. There's countless beautiful creatures. You've watched the documentaries in HD and you're thinking, wow, that's so beautiful. And then they show some really nasty stuff and say, well, yeah, it's still HD, but that is ugly. That is nasty and gross. Some horrific stuff out there that's going on in the animal kingdom. He made the gross stuff on purpose. He made the gross stuff for the purpose. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Now, this doesn't mean that there's metaphors and spiritual messages everywhere, but creation is designed to get our attention. Our enemy, from the very beginning, when Eden was in place, he selected the serpent, and God kind of went with that on many levels to kind of get many points across. Interestingly enough, for whatever it's worth, there's kind of an inborn universal fear of snakes for everybody, just about. God made them creepy on purpose. The way that they move, the way that they look, the way that they kill. Every continent has snakes except Antarctica. Maybe we just haven't found that one. As was mentioned, I think Joe mentioned this morning, St. Patrick, the legend is that he made the snakes leave Ireland. And that's because, in general, people want to get rid of them. They don't want to be around them. This is kind of interesting. I came across this not long ago. There is a fear of snakes, of course, among animals. There's even a species of monkeys that make certain sounds when they see a snake, and they know the difference between a poisonous one and a non-poisonous one. And the other monkeys will come to the collar, and they'll gather together and watch the intruder until he leaves. They also have an eagle call, and when they make that sound, all of the monkeys get out of the trees, because that means you're easy, salad bar for the eagles if you're not careful. And then there's even a leopard call, and that means to get up into the trees. We know there's certain dangers, certain animals. I don't know if you've seen where you put a cucumber by a cat. Apparently, I don't know why, but yeah, you can. You should probably get a cat just so you can do this. But apparently if you put a cucumber by a cat, they will freak out. And I guess the theory is that it resembles a snake out of the corner of their eye. It's green, it's long, who knows? Never been bitten by a cucumber, but they know that snakes are dangerous. The point is, some animals were designed to be gross, to be scary. Revelation 20 verse 2 refers to Satan as the serpent. It captures a lot of his nature. The venom that he carries. We know in 1 Peter 5:8, he's described as another animal that is also one you would not want to interact with on a personal level. Here's 1 Peter 5:8. Be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Now, I know some of you are thinking, oh, I love snakes. I want to hug them, and I like them to hug me. Or you have a friend that would say that, and I had a pet snake, and we were buddies. That's fine. That's true. You can even hypnotize somebody who has a horrible fear of snakes, who has a phobia about it. There's documentation where you can hypnotize them, and they're just cuddling up and being all comfy with this snake. But whether or not you're hypnotized, or if you domesticate them, a rattlesnake can still kill you. I don't care how comfy you guys get. Sarah found this, maybe you've seen it on the internet. There's a guy who's trying to campaign to make spiders more user-friendly. It's called Lucas the Spider, I think, and he does an animated thing, and it's got big eyes, and he uses his nephew's cute voice, and it's a very, very cute spider. And it takes a lot of effort to make this spider cute. I don't think Sarah's sold yet. Regardless of how successful this effort is to remake spiders into cuteness, black widows are still incredibly venomous. Just because we adjust, just because we get comfy with something doesn't mean everything's cool. And that's how it works with sin. There are things, I know if you look at the layout of all the things that are considered to be sin, there are things that if you go down the list, say, yes, that's very offensive to me. There are things that offend us. Some things don't offend us as much. And there's some things that don't offend us at all. I mean, we might know that it's a sin, but it doesn't really bother us that much. But it doesn't change the fact that all of them are incredibly venomous. Here's 2 Peter 2, starting with verse 20. And God is trying to get across the point that the horrible, sad ending it would be for somebody to choose to be a Christian and then to fall away. But notice the imagery that he uses here. 2 Peter 2, starting with verse 20. For if, after they have escaped the defilements of the world, they have been set apart by the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled in them and are overcome, the last state has become worse for them than the first. For it would be better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than having known it, to turn away from the holy commandment handed on to them. It has happened to them according to the true proverb, and he's quoting Proverbs, a couple of them. A dog returns to its own vomit, and a sow, a pig, after washing returns to wallowing in the mire. Does that gross you out? Good. It's meant to. It's meant to be disgusting. It's meant to make us pull away. I guess it comes down, you need to make sure that your spiritual gag reflex is still working. Because the world can make things look cute and comfy and nice and okay while they destroy you. Proverbs 6. So what this leads up to is, as we're doing our daily Bible reading, as we're spending time learning more about God, it's important to pay attention. Like I say, we have our approach to the list and say, yeah, that's offensive to me. That's not so much offensive. And we have our levels. But look at Proverbs 6:16. Notice the harsh terms here. There are 6 things which the Lord hates. Yes, 7, which are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, in other words, arrogance, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who utters lies. That's 2 times lies show up. And one who spreads strife among brothers. Look at Psalm 11:5. Psalm 11, verse 5. The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked, and the one who loves violence, his soul hates. He hates it. There are certain things in creation that are disgusting to you, that are gross and make you want to throw up. And you could probably make a list. Say, oh yeah, this would get me. Highly offensive to me. These are some things on God's list. And just like that list of unclean animals, it's easy to go down that list and say, well, that's lying? Doesn't sound too bad. Put some ranch on it. I'm okay. I guess it'd be all right. Tastes pretty good. I mean, everybody's doing it. But whether or not we're comfy with it or hypnotized into accepting it or domesticated it and become cozy with it, that doesn't change the fact that these sins are incredibly venomous. And these are things that God considers disgusting. The world will train you to think otherwise. That's what's going on. If you cut yourself loose from God, if you're not into your Bible, you will be gradually refashioned in your thinking. And as far as what is good and bad, you'll get it completely backwards. In fact, in Isaiah 5:20, God points out that this is the process. Isaiah 5:20. You won't just lose the ability to identify what's right and wrong. You'll get them switched. And I'm sure you've been paying attention enough to the world to notice that is happening on a grand scale, where people are saying this is bad and it's good, and this is good when it's bad. Here's Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good, and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Life isn't so fun when you get black widows and puppies confused. Here's what we read this morning in our daily Bible reading, or it's a part of what we're reading today. It's Leviticus 18, and it's a very interesting image. And start with verse 24. And God is talking to the people. They're about to go into the promised land. He says, let me give you a heads up. I'm going to give you a warning here. And he uses some disgusting imagery here. It's Leviticus 18:24. Leviticus 18:24. Do not defile yourselves by any of these things, for by all these the nations which I am casting out before you have become defiled. For the land is become defiled, therefore I have brought its punishment upon it, so the land has spewed out its inhabitants. In other words, it's thrown up. Verse 26, but as for you, you are to keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not do any of these abominations, neither the native nor the alien who sojourns among you. For the men of the land who have been before you have done all these abominations, and the land has become defiled, so that the land will not spew you out, should you defile it, as it has spewed out the nation which has been before you. That's why people vomit. I guess there's no better way to put it. Is there's a sickness in them, and their body is saying this needs to get out. And he's saying this promised land that you're having, that you're headed for, it's been sick a long time, and I'm going to remove the sickness. Don't become the sickness, because then the land will throw up you as well. The land has vomited them out, the land will vomit you out. God created everything, and he made certain parts of it disgusting. There's certain things in the animal kingdom that strike fear or cause disgust in our reaction to them. And it's one more way that he's trying to point in the right direction. The world is very busy trying to make you comfortable with sin. There are things I know that if you go back 10 years in your mind, you will discover there are things in your life now that don't offend you as much as they used to, or things that you see or hear or that you're aware of doesn't cause quite the offensive reaction that it once did. That's the world working on us. Our daily Bible reading will help fine-tune our perspective. This is clean, this is not. We have to learn to hate what God hates, and then with love, help other people see the truth. Because someday, we will stand before God, and we are to be holy and blameless, to be set apart and perfect. The only way, of course, to have that is through baptism. If you have not made that choice, it's so very important to consider that there is defilements galore waiting for the soul who cuts themselves loose from God and continues to live in that condition. If you are a Christian, I would encourage you, and I hope you'll encourage me, to keep looking at your life. Make sure you're making a distinction between good and evil, and God will make sure we end up standing before him clean in the truest sense of the word. Pray you'll think about it while we stand together and sing.